Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Transportation, Infrastructure, Energy, and Environment Committee. We have a few items on our agenda today. Ms. Myhill, why don't
into programs that the fund is intended to support. So, I mean, there are some pretty straightforward staff recommendations on, I guess, pages 4 and 6 of the packet.
So, Mr. Hammond, let me make sure I understand. My goal was to make sure that what happened last year never happens, and that these dollars are to supplant the existing efforts, not to supplant, thank you, not to supplant, to supplement existing efforts. This recommendation achieves that purpose?
Yes, it very clearly states that.
Secondly, with respect to expanding the uses, I would need to understand more that issue, because my belief is that we do have work to do to fulfill the purpose of the legislation as originally intended. And I appreciate that we have a bit of time to get this right insofar as the money's gone for FY19. So I am not eager to, quote, expand the uses of the fund without an understanding that that's necessary to achieve the original purpose. So give voice to how that language is drafted.
Okay. Let me first make very clear that the sort of intended constituencies to be served, it would not be expanded.
Okay.
The use of the fund would be totally restricted to improving transportation options for persons with disabilities, eligible senior citizens, and persons of limited income. Okay. That doesn't change. It doesn't open that up.
Thank you.
It just gives, as recommended, it would just, as the law currently reads, it's limited to incentives. And there's just the addition of program enhancements would allow, I think, DOT to be a little more creative in the ways they spend that money, again, to serve those populations and their transportation needs only. So it's a very limited expansion.
Words program expansion. Show me that language.
Okay.
Is that
that's on page 7?
Page 7, number 2 there?
2, right. It's just the addition of or program enhancements, and then including persons with disabilities in that category. As the law currently reads, the persons with disabilities sort of component is limited to the retrofitting incentives, and this would allow, again, DOT to come up with other ways in addition to that to serve those populations.
Got it. Mr. Roshdi, tell me where you guys are in your thinking about this set of issues, because obviously the program is originally devised by you was not sufficient to attract people that said, gosh, okay, we'll have an accessible vehicle and this works for us. It didn't work, and that's why the dollars were sitting there. What's your plan going forward? How are you going to interact with our stakeholders with respect to it, with the council going forward? We do have time to get this right, but what is your time frame and your thoughts with respect to it?
Sure. Let me start by saying that I was as much surprised when I see the expenditure is not as we expected, because we know for a fact that there are a number of accessible taxis are operating, but they're not coming and collecting based on the existing regulation. This was new to us, Mr. Berliner, and we are learning. So where we are right now, we have identified the areas that we can certainly improve. In terms of the capital expenditure, I'm thinking that many of these people who wants to purchase and get into accessible taxi probably need the money up front. However, at the same time, I want to make sure that the county benefit from this investment. So I'm thinking that we can pay the $15,000 toward the purchase of the vehicle, however, put a lien on the vehicle for, let's say, 5 years, according to our initial plan. There are other ways that we can improve in terms of the, there are PVL costs that we could Right now, for the new PVL, there is a fee that has to be paid. This PVL actually pays for the county staff operating and doing the taxi regulation. So we could use the fund to actually substitute for that. The other area that is my concern is our goal is to be fully accessible taxi industry in Montgomery County by 2025. That's what the council set as a goal. In order to achieve the goal, we may have to require that any replacement vehicle going forward has to be accessible, even though there might be a sedan right now, but when they come for replacement, they have to be accessible. And of course, they can get this $15,000 or whatever amount. The other thing I want to share with you is we are working with the Taxi Commission as well as a number of other commission or interested parties, the Commission on Aging, Commission with people with disabilities. We want to hear their ideas and their recommendation, and then we will come back with the new regulation that will achieve our goal as to make this work.
And your time frame for coming forward with that is what?
In the next few months, because we are very close. We have asked at least our taxi commission to work on this, come back with some recommendations, and we will have a meeting of the commission. And from that point, then I think we will be very close to coming up with a revised regulation, and of course we have to go through the process and then ultimately bring it back to the council for approval.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, any questions? Hearing none? Oh, I think it's a 3-0 vote in favor of the bill as recommended by staff.
I gathered that when I arrived this morning, the parking lot, the council member portion of the county lot was pretty empty,
Yes.
but I am
928.
impressed. I am so impressed by the efficiency of this committee that I missed the first item,
did.
which was forest conservation. So
Vote yes?
we voted yes.
We voted
And
yes.
please add me to that. Thank you.
3-0 vote.
I am in awe every day of your efficient operation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
It is a beautiful thing. Wait, so we can be out of here?
We do.
Anything else happening there? Is anything else?
Dr. Orlin, what do you got?
Excuse me. The next item is a supplemental appropriation request,
Move approval.
CIP amendment from the county executive for $1,565,000 for the cost of constructing Teachers Way Extended in Gaithersburg.
Staff recommend approval?
Yes.
I
But
move it.
the next person, I think the next group of folks aren't entirely here yet, so
That's okay.
if you want to just stop now, you can.
Would they accept a yes?
Yeah, no, it's not that. I think it's the next group after that
Or
he's
the next-
referring to.
well,
Right, the next group.
Purple line? Really? They're not?
Red Craig is en route. He's parked and he's walking up.
Okay.
And Chuck Latuca's not here yet either, so.
He's got 50, we have 15 minutes.
Yeah, we actually told him to try to get here before 10, so, we didn't know this is
There are other things
warp
going on.
speed.
With him, he's literally.
Okay, so we approve, the committee approves this item,
All right.
and we will pause until such time as you guys are here.
Thank you. Forgive us.
You got anything
Let the
to add?
record reflect, I have the matching
No?
jacket.
You're cool? You're cool?
So how's everybody doing?
Swell. You're having fun, huh?
Oh, it is great.
Glenn? Come on over. There are a number of us that are interested in seeing other things going on today.
Sure.
How long is this anticipated?
As long as you want to make it. I mean, they have a PowerPoint presentation. I don't think it'll go more than 15, 20 minutes.
Hi, Judy, how are you?
Ask Ashley. She actually.
That policy you have, that was given to all of you.
That is one of the questions people have, is like, really, you guys are going to be holding to the schedule that,
Not the March 11th, 22 schedule, but end of 22.
end of 22. All right, why don't you guys introduce yourself? Welcome. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for sharing with us where things stand. It is a matter of great interest to this community and to our state as a whole. So,
Well, thank you for having us again. We're happy to be here to update you. We were here 6 months ago, Fred and I I think a lot has actually happened since the last time we were here. And Fred has a good presentation on and a construction update for you. And we appreciate you taking the time to have this meeting with us.
welcome, good sir.
Thank you. I think this is my 6-month anniversary. I
think you were here like on day one, I believe.
Maybe day 4. But, so thank you very much for having us again. We'll try to make sure we answer all of your questions. We've tried to give you an overview based upon some of the inquiries we've had and some things that we've learned.
Yep. I just got a couple of things before you start your presentation. So Fred's going to cover a couple of these things in the presentation, but we do have, last year during the CTP tour, it was requested that we hold a large open house meeting in each of the counties. And we have one scheduled for Montgomery County. I think it's on Monday, right? Mm-hmm. And on Monday, there's an open house meeting where there'll be easels and hopefully we'll have our train model there that we received. It's about 7 feet long. We're trying to figure out how to get it there to the Civic Center and get it delivered there and pick it up again. So that'll happen on Monday, and we're also going to start the community advisory teams back up. They were on hiatus for the summer while people were taking their vacations, and now everybody's back. In October and November, we're going to accomplish another round of each of the CAT. We have 8 CAT territories and 4 in Montgomery County, 4 in Prince George's County.
You okay back there?
Little comic relief.
Didn't want my phones to go off.
So that's not. I don't think that is in the presentation, but I just want to let you know that the very important community advisory team meetings will be starting up here in a week or so, and this is how we disseminate construction information to the public with the members from the community organizations that are involved directly, and we also have of course, that are open to the public, and the public has an opportunity at the end of each meeting to raise issues with the people, the construction team that's giving the presentation. And that's my only update before the presentation starts.
And I assume construction activity is going to pick up significantly this fall as a function of the migratory bird set of issues now being passed, if you will. And so there's been a pause, and now it's going to pick up rather significantly, I assume.
That's correct.
So all the more reason why communication with our constituents is going to be at a premium, because life will be getting significantly different and not better.
Yes, understand that.
More challenging.
Okay.
Never want to hear a presentation from a guy who makes his living sitting at orange barrels. I do, around the communication issue, want to introduce you to a couple of people. John Undelin was the man behind the curtain who was taking my telephones. He's our communication director for PLTP, the concessionaire. Carla, Julian, and Natalie are here from PLTC. They're the ones that have really the day-to-day contact with community members, residents, and businesses within Montgomery County. And I asked them to come along because I want the communication people, I know that's an important part for you all, and I want them to be available to us to answer questions about the day-to-day activities with residents of the county.
Can I just ask that we have that contact information? If you ladies are the folks that we refer constituents to, sure. If we could get that, Glenn. Thank you.
The other thing is I answer my own telephone, and I try when someone contacts me directly to answer those. Carla, Natalie, and of course Mike Madden are all pretty available. At the end of the slide, there's also a contact point, but we're very aggressive about it to make sure.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not going to run through this in great detail. You all have seen the organizational chart. Chuck is the guy that I report to on this project as the CEO of the concessionaire. We have a very aggressive design and construction activity going on now to both plan for and implement some of the work. We'll talk a little bit about the work. As you all are aware, this project is fairly lengthy. It's 20 miles long. It's broken up in a number of segments. The construction on the segments is built around a critical path, and the critical path is based upon us getting a completion date in October of 2022 for the project to have revenue service for the project. So we're working very aggressively to bring that up. If you look at the segments, we're going to talk about the ones in Montgomery County today, since those are the ones that are your primary focus, but I'm more than happy to answer questions on any of the others if you would like. It's broken down this way so that we can manage it and also be able to do work in parallel. It's not like you start at one end of a project and work to the other. You work on multiple phases so that you can advance the construction at an accelerated rate. So, as I said earlier, we still have a fall 2022 goal for revenue service. Safety, I want to bring that up at the very first because safety is one of the most important things we want to have for both our workers, the residences, the businesses, the students. We go through an area that is heavily populated. We've only had one lost time reportable incident, and that was where a truck backed into one of our own employees, didn't even hurt him. But so we're very conscious about safety, and everyone who walks into the job, the first thing they do on their first day of work is go through safety training. We're also very actively and aggressively watching our employment activities and our minority business participation. We measure that. I've got charts with me that literally came off the press last night. They're not as dressed up as the rest of these are, but they're available to you if you would like to look at them. One of the things that we have within the P3 agreement is to make sure that nationally targeted workers are employed. The idea here is to leave a legacy employment and training with this project, not only to take existing trained people and advance their careers, but also then backfill with people from the lower trades so they can begin to have an advanced trade training as well. You all have probably seen this. The United States is behind about 800,000 construction workers to do the work that's already on the plates of businesses and government. So this is a national shortage and will limit the ability of this country to rebuild its infrastructure. So we're actively engaged in trying to make sure that the workforce is trained.
Are you working with Workforce Montgomery at all?
We have I don't know if that's one of the ones. I would suspect so. But we have a group of people that do nothing but work on the workforce development. But I'll get an answer to that. That's not one I recognize, but if it's one of your county organizations, I suspect we are.
It is the lead organization for workforce development.
I'm guessing we're working on it. I'll find out for you.
I'd like to hear.
Okay, sure. I've only been here 6 months. I haven't learned everything yet, but I'm working on it. I've been drinking from a fire hose. Okay, so these are the things that I wanted to mention about workforce. We have a very aggressive DBE subcontracting activities. PLTC, the joint venture that does the design and the construction, is monitored monthly on their performance, and we measure that. The goals on this project are something that you don't wait till the end to do it. You've got to do it every single month. And if you get behind, you got to catch up, and you stay ahead. That's where you want to go. So over time, we will have some very significant DBE participations. We report to MTA on every single contract we sign. And so they're monitoring that, measuring it, and verifying that as we go forward, because that's one of our metrics in the job. These are the slides that are a little, I'll get you new ones, but these are a little fuzzy because they literally came out last night. Our nationally targeted workers program is pretty aggressive for the construction workforce. As I mentioned to you, this starts at the top with my organization, the people that I have as a diverse workforce. And it goes all the way down to through the trades into the construction activities. We're also doing this for the operations and maintenance for the people that will actually operate and maintain the light rail vehicles. So it goes from top to bottom. Everybody's got a metric for around this particular requirement. Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about the great stuff, okay, because this to me is what is probably one of the most important things that we are doing. Put it back one.
Just skip one.
Sorry.
Little Bethesda.
The Bethesda one?
Yeah,
Sorry.
the chairman would appreciate.
Okay. Okay, so we took a tour of this day before yesterday. And one of the things that I want to point out is this job has got two things in it. It's got some very large excavation that's complex, and it has a tremendous number of utilities. It's a huge utility relocation job, which means one of two things. One is, of course, the streets are torn up, but then the other thing is we put back utilities that are in a better position that we found them. So they're betterments that come with this project. These are the construction pictures over at what we call the Bethesda shaft. This is where the large car development is going on in your community. We have a deep shaft there that goes down to the red line that's part of the office building. And the very large things that look like pipes are called struts. Those are the items that are the equipment that holds the excavation back. And so these are very deep holes. There's a lot of earth pressure with them. In some cases, there's water or rock. The item in the middle, the little chart there, that is a minor tag in, tag out. Anybody who goes in the shaft, they have a tag on them. They have a tag saying in there, so if we ever have an accident there, we'll know who was in the shaft at the time, so you don't have to go looking. So we follow mine safety activities. The picture up to the right there, you can kind of see the alignment of one of your streets. In the lower right-hand corner of that, you can see that that's where the shaft is, where our excavation is going on. We're maybe a third of the way down in that shaft. It's a very complex operations because you're mining vertically down into and attaching later on to a WMATA station. So it's not simple work. Very complex, somewhat dangerous, but of course, as I mentioned to you, safety is the critical thing.
Just like to add, this is the county-funded high-speed elevator project, and this is your money at work. When
The liquor fund money, yeah.
That's right. And when the car groundbreaking took place around August 9th or 10th, the hole for the shaft probably wasn't even deep enough to bury a Volkswagen, but now they've made a lot of progress since then, and it's about 50 feet down. What you're going to see in the picture there, you'll see next to the yellow crane on the right of the picture, that's the PLTP's crane, and you'll see a decked over area right next to the crane there, just above, adjacent to Elm Street. That is, the car is building the box for the station. And they're making really good progress on getting that box, and it's scheduled to be delivered to PLTP so they can start outfitting the station by the end of March of 2019. And it looks like they're going to make that date. So, and thank you for the investment, because otherwise the connection between the purple line and the red line would be about a 2-block walk.
And how long will Elm Street be out of service?
Probably another year and a half. This is a critical issue, and I want to address that directly at the point in time when you all want to inquire about this. This is one of the tightest construction sites you can imagine. We were there yesterday, and there are 4 tower cranes in this location alone. Just the delivery of materials has to be planned for. There's an office building being wrapped up next to it. There's one in construction literally on top of the work that we're performing. We do appreciate very much your all's participation. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Tim Couples and Al Rushdie about maintenance of traffic, because they have been critically important to us in getting a lot of our programs tailored to what the community needs. We've been very active in, Carla has been very active in trying to make sure the community is aware of what's going on, and that we really try to accommodate the needs that come up with them. We can't fix everything, but we are sensitive to it, and are trying to mitigate where we can those activities that are disruptive to the community. This is one that's probably a little deserves some special discussion. The trail was closed when we took over the project. Part of that because we have a lot of clearing to do. There's a lot of work in this particular area. There were concerns about closing the trail without beginning work. But one of the things that I pointed out earlier is safety. And if we leave part of the trail open and people are using part of it, we've got big equipment out there. Pedestrians tend not to be particularly worried about that. And so we want to make sure that that area is contained and closed and safe. We have a lot of erosion and sediment control to do. We have a great deal of tree clearing to do. One of the things that I'm very proud of about our project is the stormwater management and the erosion control. I drive through this job every week and look around at it, and I've been very impressed by comparison to other jobs I've been on, as well as some of the other things I see in the community about how good our contractor is about maintaining the area clean, neat, swept, safe, and mitigating stormwater. As you all have known, this year we've had a tremendous amount of rainfall, and that has to be handled. These are small impoundments, things of that nature.
You guys survived yesterday's storm pretty well?
Yeah. Yeah. I just got back from North Carolina, and we haven't had storms here like they've had in North Carolina, just by way of comparison, but that was another event. So you mentioned the tree clearing that we have from April to September the 1st. We try to make sure that we get in ahead of that and drop the trees in April, and then do some clearing afterwards. So we were some accelerated activities along those lines, which had to be completed. I love this picture right
Can you
here.
go back for just a moment?
Sure.
I just want to underscore something that I know you appreciate. Getting this Capitol Crescent Trail right is going to be so important to our community. We have big drawings of a beautiful looking trail that people are so skeptical will actually happen. So I just say to you, that piece better be just right.
Point taken. Okay, so this picture right here, I just want to point out something. This is earthwork. This is the Littonsville Place Bridge. This was obviously very controversial when we closed it. But one thing I want to point out here is the quality of the earthwork here. There's some of the earthwork done on this job that looks like it's been done with a scalpel. The reason they do that is to try to maintain good erosion control. There are times when we dig a hole out, in a particular area, and they covered up that night with straw if it's going to rain to try to control that. What you see here is the one end of the Littonsville Place Bridge. This is going to be completed this fall. Here are some of the construction pictures showing around the piling, the mechanically stabilized earth walls, and some of the other areas. We have had a very significant participation with this community. I feel like I know some of the people in the community personally because we spent a lot of time out there trying to make sure that we got the traffic issues right and communicated properly. Your Department of Engineering was extraordinarily collaborative in trying to get some really difficult things sorted out. So we're working very hard to bring this in on time because it's so critical to the community, and we're sensitive to the fact that Talbot Avenue had to be closed and this one at the same time. But we're very actively engaged in trying to make sure that those are done quickly. All right, you all asked about, we're just going to start at one end and go to the other. This area has some extremely difficult construction activities. We're interfacing with WMATA, we interface with CSX, we interface with SHA and Montgomery County, and then each of the individual cities. At the Silver Spring Transit Center, we have a very large aerial structure that has to be built across WMATA and CSX lines. We have very short closure windows on those. We are placing 100-ton beams that are in the neighborhood of 100 feet long. Those have to be brought in on trucks and are stationed on some of the roads when they're brought in just because of their size. It's not something that you can put in a parking lot in a stack and pick up. They have to be brought in and set in a very coordinated activity. We're going to begin this work later next year. We've spent a tremendous amount of time working on constructability on this one because we have limitations on what we can close on Colesville Road, what we can do with CSX, and what we can do with WMATA. And the goal here is to minimize and mitigate closures and maintenance of traffic issues all the way through that particular project. So this is one of the more complex maintenance of traffic, maintenance of operation activities because of WMATA's bus and rail operations and because CSX closes for no one. You're probably aware. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hucker.
Can you just elaborate on that, Fred? So where the yellow work zone is, those pedestrian pathways across the green space now, those are closed.
Yes.
But pedestrians will retain access down Colesville Road.
Yes.
And down Ramsey.
Now, one of the things that we will do is we will put up signage to direct pedestrians about where they're supposed to go so that they have we've got some signage samples in here for you a little later, but one of the things we'll do is to make sure that pedestrians are directed so they don't inadvertently get lost or end up in a work zone where they don't belong just because they happen to walk through an open gate.
Great. There was a lot of need for improved signage and confusion during the transit center.
Sure. So what we'll do on that, we put out maps.
Yep.
On Littonsville Place, we spent a lot of time developing a map. That was one of the first CATS meeting I went to, and I really felt like we could do a better job of communicating, which we worked very hard at. That was sort of my baptism by fire the first couple of weeks I was here. And PLTC and their graphics people put together a really good set of maps to really describe how we could get people around better in those areas, both from a traffic and a pedestrian standpoint. Bonifant Street, this is a challenging issue because we're closing some of these streets for construction. Carla, I think, probably knows most of the business owners on a first-name basis. I understand that in her spare time she patronizes a couple of businesses over there to get to know people. But we also do try to make sure that our people are patronizing some of the businesses in these areas where we're affecting them from construction. We buy materials. We try to patronize the restaurants. There were issues around when deliveries needed to happen on some of the restaurants, and we changed the means and methods around which the work was done to make sure that their deliveries for restaurants could come in on Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays, and that we weren't impacting their activities during their primary money-making times. This is not a complete solution, but it is as good as we can do under the circumstance. Everybody knows there's going to be construction here, and we're trying to make sure that we're sensitive to the fact that the businesses will be impacted and to try to patronize them as best we can. Wayne Avenue, I have spent a fair amount of time over there in the school. And that area on Wayne Avenue is a pretty complex construction area. And just trying to get that completed in a timely manner, given the school is there and the limitations on working around the schools. Those are things that we want to make sure that we accommodate and that we're sensitive to. This is also a heavily driven area. There are a lot of pedestrians, and we want to make sure that the pedestrians and the people driving and the students and so on are protected in a safe area. So at the middle school this past spring and summer, a significant number of trees, and it breaks my heart, but a significant number of trees taken down in that area. The parking lots were reconfigured. There's a big stormwater management facility that goes in there. And one of the things that I'm really proud of that Carla did is Carla got a number of the contractors to contribute money towards the STEM education program at the school. So we're going to be donating seed packs. We're doing some activities for the Girls in Construction program. They've got a big program there. We're trying to make sure that while the school is impacted, that we really do try to be good partners with them. Carla had benches made from trees and all kinds of things to make contributions to their educational program. We've been out there with some of the parents. We went to the opening day of the school where they pass out popsicles to try to make sure that they understand what it is that we're doing, but then also to caution the parents that this is a construction zone and they need to counsel their children just to be careful and to be on the lookout for this, because there are a lot of cars in this area as well, but also construction.
Why did you have to remove all the trees?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is, probably one of the biggest reasons, is that this is a high voltage electrical system. The catenary poles are close to the trees. You have to be very careful because high voltage electricity will jump to a tree. There's also utility relocations on one side, and the alignment of the tracks and so on are at a place where the trees were in the way. We have 13 acres of reforesting areas that we're doing as part of the project, and 80 acres total as part of the mitigation for the trees.
Are you going to be planting tree replacing those?
There will be some trees. They obviously won't be the 3-foot diameter old growth trees, but there will be trees in this area. Yes.
But at least there will be trees that don't grow so high, presumably.
Yeah, they will also be set back from the catenary poles.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm sensitive to that. I think the first day I walked into the job, I wondered who was cutting down all the trees, and Chuck told me, it's you. So I'm sorry about that.
You know, these little things make a big, big difference in how a place feels.
Yep, I agree.
So the sooner that you can make some effort to get something going there, be great.
Okay, the landscaping is sort of like the paint in the house.
That stuff always happens at the tip of the end, but if there's any way that you can move that part up when you're done with the utility stuff. I understand it's ordinarily part of a comprehensive plan, but that was such a devastating blow.
I heard about it.
To the school community.
I heard about it there. I heard about it from the president of the University of Maryland. I heard it from individual people, and I'm very sensitive to that myself.
And it's just a short stretch.
Sure.
If you could slip that in,
sure,
that'd be great.
Okay, good point. Thank you. This is the Manchester Place end of the tunnel. If you drive by there, literally this is one of those things where the tunnel portal comes right out of the street. The thing about a tunnel is there are only two ways to get material out, and that's the two ends of the tunnel. So we have tens of thousands of cubic yards of material that come out of this. Some of it's clay, some of it's decomposed rock, and some of it's hard rock. This is the area where the station portal comes out onto Manchester Place. There are residential areas right on top of this. We have had some complaints about dust and noise and vibration. You've read about it in the newspaper. Carla has worked closely with some of the individuals here who are adversely affected, and in a couple of places put people in private accommodations who had special needs, working with the county and then working with some of the social service agencies to try to accommodate the particular needs. This is a disruptive, noisy, dusty project. To the contractor's credit, they keep this site cleaner than anything I've seen in the county. MTA is very aggressive about enforcing the technical provisions on dust and noise and material in the street. We even do cleanup for other people that's not ours, just to make sure that we are accommodating the requirements of and the intent of the project. Parking on the streets with our contractors is something that's monitored every day. Those come directly to my desk right from the resident engineer that MTA has. So if we have an environmental violation of some kind where we don't have either dirt on the street, dust, noise, anything, that comes to me directly immediately. So it's something we take really seriously right at the top, and it's addressed in a rapid manner. MTA is very aggressive about enforcing that. We want to do a good job anyway, but they're very aggressive about enforcing that. Oops, sorry. This is why young people run these. All right, so this is the tunnel excavation under Flower Street at Arliss Street. This is a fairly unique type of construction here. This is the tunnel excavation. We are digging the top half of the tunnel first with a supported excavation that is what's called the new Austrian tunneling method. It's really not new and it's not Austrian, but that's what they call it.
It's an accurate name.
It's the standard technique that everybody in the mining industry uses.
Hire new Austrians.
One of the things, again, is important here is you see
our engineer here is Swiss, actually.
Oh.
He is actually, yeah. We have people from all over the world working here because of some of the techniques. But the thing important about here is you see the big yellow struts that hold the excavation back. There are laser monitors on about 30 places out here so we can make sure that there is a stable excavation point. That big pipe in the middle is the ventilation. To just walk in the tunnel, you have to have tunnel safety training that's about 6 hours. This is a dangerous place, so we don't let anyone in there. And so we want to make sure that that this is built well. They will go all the way to Manchester Place with the top arch, and they'll come back and dig the bottom half, and then the tunnel will be lined, and the mechanical equipment and the tracks and systems will all go in after the fact. So this is a difficult place for us to work. I took a tour with one of your state representatives about 3 or 4 weeks ago through the area. We actually got a compliment from one of the business owners about the fact that they had, we'd really been careful about noise and dust. Carla and some of the construction workers went out and put in a pedestrian delineator for Giant Foods because of the bike interference with the people. They did that on their own time. So there's a real sensitivity on the part of the workers to try to make this as disruptive as possible. That said, it's still going to be noisy and dusty. So we're trying to make sure that we address that and stay within the technical provisions of what we're allowed, but then also take any complaints we get from the community very seriously.
Do you want questions slide by slide or all at the end?
You can do whatever you want.
Thank you, Fred. Carla's been great to work with, and I appreciate your willingness to work with a number of members of the community that have stepped up on the scarcity of parking in the area around Giant Food, and the leadership of Annie Tolkien in our district, who has been working with Carla and others on the pedestrian delineators. However, there are two issues. One is they're not ADA compliant yet, and Giant's aware of this, but and they've been supportive, but the REIT that owns the parking lot isn't so supportive, and I wonder if we can get your help in getting ADA compliance, because that's not, it's called a temporary entrance, but it's going to be there for a number of years.
I'll find out about that. I failed to mention that. If I get an environmental complaint from anyone or something that's ADA non-compliant, if the ramps aren't the right thing or the markings are peeled up or they don't have the right cross slope, I hear from MTA. So if this is an area, is this something that Giant Foods own? I've heard a little bit about this. I don't think this is ours, but I'll find out about what we can do to help with that.
Is it that it's not 5 feet? Is that the issue?
Well, there are a couple issues. Yeah, so the REIT owns the parking lot. Giant's the anchor tenant. The solution that you put in is much better than people just wandering through the parking lot, but it's a kind of quick and dirty solution. The pathway is too narrow. It's not ADA compliant. And it does get people from Flower Avenue into the parking lot, but then it ends in an active parking lot and doesn't take them all the way up to the Giant.
I noticed that. I walked through it
Right.
a couple days ago, and it did seem a little narrow. And I understand your point about that's the driveway. I'm sorry. I did notice that it's a little narrow, and that it's really just for the driveway entrance, and it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't really take you around the rest of the parking lot.
Right.
Carla, did you have
But
something you want to say?
It's much better than nothing.
It's
but
probably something they have to work out with the private property owner to figure that out.
And I'd love to get your help working with the private property owner because they haven't been very responsive to me.
They've been difficult to work with for us too.
Okay. So
We had to go to court.
Carla, come and introduce yourself formally. Your name is being used a lot in this conversation.
She does all the heavy lifting.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carla Julian, and I manage all the public affairs and community outreach for Purple Line Transit Constructors. We have been trying to work with the Giant. I think there's one more step I can probably take with you, Chuck, with talking to their attorney, because I know you guys still have some things going on with the negotiations over there. But the only thing that we have authority over is that temporary connection, and I've been working with Annie, and I'm working with my guys right now. They're already looking at the design to see how they can widen that. So that conversation is already happening. I've raised that last week again with them. So I think we're definitely going to try to do that. We did cut all of that growth that's growing up right there because I think that was bothering people. It's not technically on our property, but I had some people go out there and just cut it all down. So that was done this week. So I think we'll be able to definitely address the pedestrian walkway and the temporary connection, but we don't have the authority to do anything in the Giant parking lot, so we'll try to work together.
I think some of the the driveway to the store is probably going to be more on the property owner to address those issues. So, but I do think there are some, like Carla said, there's a couple of issues we can do about the driveway where the state and the contractor, dictated where that driveway was and constructed it.
to widen that. But yeah, if we can continue to work with you to put pressure on the property owner to get it's not much help to get people safely into a parking lot and then have them hit by a car in the parking lot.
Agreed.
And it's going to be there for years, so we should just finish the job. Related is there's a real scarcity of parking in the neighborhoods. There is lots of space in that parking lot every morning. I see it. We have asked in other contexts after the nearby explosion and fire a couple years ago whether they would allow people to park in the parking lot overnight, and we received a no, even to fire and explosion victims. So if you could help us.
In their position, even when we offered to pay for some spaces, that's been their position, unfortunately.
To follow up with that, MTA is very aggressive about enforcing the no construction parking on county streets. So we provide parking, we try to make sure of it. If we get overflow in our area, I hear about it, and then we immediately move it in 30 minutes if it's been there for more than 10 minutes.
And I appreciate you covering the costs of the additional enforcement of keeping the construction trucks out of residential neighborhoods.
We're working on it. But I do appreciate your telling us things that we could do better. This is one of the good things about good communication is we don't see or know everything. I'm sure you all hear a lot about it from the community. So if there are things that we can do better, we certainly will do that. I know Carla has worked unfailingly with this community to try to make it better.
She has. And you mentioned the residents who have special medical needs and have been disrupted by the and adversely affected by the construction. I think. Do you know how many residents you've relocated?
Right now, it's only one. That's Lynn Stark, and the other woman who is recovering from cancer and still in chemo is Donna. And I did offer her one, but she doesn't. It's not convenient for her to leave.
We've offered and they declined.
Okay. I think there may be more needs for additional funds in the future on this. Thank you.
But, we're trying to be, this is an invasive project.
Yeah.
And people see it from the place you're in contact with them. So we're trying to be sensitive to that aspect of it in every way. So that'll be our takeaway. We'll get back to you on that, Mr. Hugger. All right.
Sorry. What time of day? You had blasting on there won't occur till 2019?
It's just during the day. It's
what time in the morning does it start?
Yeah, it's the window.
5 a.m.
5 to 9. Now, they're not going to. They're trying not to do it during that time period, but that is the actual time period that's allowed.
We have
under your contract.
Yes.
Right. Why is it so early?
Can I explain one thing real quickly before we go too far down this way? We have a notification requirement to the community that we have to meet. We will, obviously nobody wants to have something happen like that at 5 a.m. in the morning. But it's the setup and everything else. We cannot bring any explosives onto the site except that which we're going to use for the day. Mm-hmm. So this has to be well orchestrated. It has to come in. It comes in under guard. It has to be placed during that time, and then it has to be detonated or removed from the site that day. So there's a particular requirement that we have to meet here. Obviously, we're not going to set it off first thing in the morning, but there is a notification requirement that we work very closely with your county folks about this. It starts 3 days ahead, and then we have a countdown to it, and then right before anything's going to happen, we put out a notice again, so people know what it is.
To your point, 5 a.m. is when you're still doing transportation and setup?
Correct.
And then how early will the first blast be?
I'm going to have to bunt on that one yet. I think it will take several hours to set it up, but I'll get back to you on that of what the timing is. It's not certainly going to be within a couple of hours of the time it arrives. This is a complex operation. I'd really rather not talk about this anymore.
Sure. Okay.
Talk to you individually.
Sure.
If I could. Okay. So one of the things that's cool about this project is there's big equipment on it. The machine on the left is a mine header machine. It has a rotating arm that goes in and digs all the dirt out. The articulated loader on the right is the thing that pulls all what's called muck out, or the excavation. This is a pretty dangerous operation, so this is all like orchestrated. There's only a certain area in the portal where you can go in and come out, and it's ventilated to make sure that the workers are in a safe place in case we had hit any underground gas, methane, or anything of that nature. This is all done underground. It's dark. It's somewhat wet. It's very constrained. You can see in this picture the placement of steel cages. They go in and spray gunite on the inside of this. Is what it looks like, the spraying of the inside of a swimming pool. They mine ahead of it with rock bolts and then go in and pull the excavation out and haul it out. So we are taking tens of thousands of cubic yards of material out of here, and that goes to designated spoil areas. Again, this will have some blasting later on in the year when they're coming back to do the bottom part of the tunnel. We have not hit any materials requiring blasting to this point. So we're trying to make sure that we are sensitive to the activity, the safety of the employees, and the impact of the neighborhood when we're doing this. This is going very well. We're down about probably 450 or 500 feet on the top drift of this tunnel, so that's going very well. Oh, okay. Real quickly, ventilation. Here was Secretary Ron and the project team. These are all the people who do the real work. They're out there looking inside the tunnel. This was day before yesterday. Secretary and our team are very happy with the collaboration we've gotten from the county staff and your contribution. Business outreach. This is one of the plugs for both a local restaurant and for the activities that the Purple Line is trying to do with the local community. Carla arranged a little reception for the secretary and the project team at the restaurant right there near the project site. As I mentioned earlier, we're trying to make sure that everybody knows that these businesses are open, and where we can, we're using county-based vendors. We can't do it on everything, but we really try to be sensitive to that.
The restaurant also has a Purple Line lunch menu if you're ever interested in visiting that.
Well, and it's a great blow to my office, but I believe you picked up my legislative aide, Julio Cerrone, to lead your Spanish outreach.
And we're very happy to have him. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's.
He gave us great insights on what to say today, by the way.
So I'm expecting a lot of concessions in return.
So what is the Purple Line special?
Yeah, really.
She's got a couple different things on there. She's got there's a lunch menu specifically where she's got several different entrees listed out at discounted prices, and then on the back side there's a happy hour menu as well.
A Purple Line happy hour.
Yeah, we're actually working with her. She wants to meet a lot of the tunnel workers, so we're going to hold a different reception where she's going to do discounted things, and we're going to invite a lot of the project officials out if you guys want to come.
Make sure I know about that.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry we poached your employee, but he's going to be a big contributor to us.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of payment back.
We'll try to.
Actually, I don't get you guys are sorry about that. I don't think that.
I'll try to put a sorry face on, but we're very happy to have him. You trained him well, so thank you. Okay, so one of the things that I mentioned earlier is signage. This is something I'm particularly near and dear to. We built a big project once where we had a NFL stadium and a baseball ballpark right next to it, and we had a couple 100,000 people, a week going in and out of there. Pedestrian safety is really important. It's really critical now because everybody wears earbuds, and that is a very big safety risk. So signage becomes important because of visual cues and cues on the ground become important. We really have to try to enforce the people staying out of the areas where there are construction barricades. This is true on the trail where people want to climb over and take shortcuts. People want to take shortcuts through the construction area. We just have to be really rigid about that to make sure they don't do that. So signage is important, and also putting out maps on the website, doing handouts, business community contacts, doing all those kinds of things are important. Chuck mentioned we have the countywide meetings coming up. We are pretty actively participating in the CATS meetings. Those are really run by MTA, but the project team is out there. I use them as kind of a barometer of how we're doing, because the first one I went to in Littonsville, I think Carla will remember, the next day I came back and said we got to do a better job, and I think that's really was a turning point with that community to try to make sure that we were doing everything that they needed to get done.
So in the past, these kinds of meetings have been criticized for not allowing a full discussion of issues and just sort of speaking to the crowd. Are you working real hard to make sure that people feel like they have an opportunity to be heard and that you're being responsive to them as opposed to talked at?
So I think the first round of meetings in last November and October, November, were probably like that, where it was these were kickoff meetings, and they were more presentation than they were give and take. But the last round, the meetings have evolved into more of a give and take type of meeting, and I don't think that's a completely fair criticism now. But thank you. We are cognizant of that issue, though, to make sure that we get enough participation from the people who attend.
Because it can actually work against you otherwise. I mean,
that's right.
We have a community meeting, but if the community doesn't feel like it has an opportunity to be heard and their views respected, if not always agreed to.
And then, as you know, in particular with Littonsville, with the bridge being closed, we actually did a couple additional meetings to ensure that we had proper, input from the community on that project.
And to follow that, that was the first CATS meeting I went to. It wasn't particularly fun. A lot of community sentiment about issues. We had, as Chuck mentioned, a couple of follow-ups. We completely modified our maintenance of traffic. I feel like Carla and I rode every road over there with a couple of community leaders. And so we are sensitive to that, and actually just didn't listen. We responded to it, and both your staff and SHA and MTA staff revised our whole traffic maintenance system for that. So that's a fair criticism. We want to make sure that we do better. We're continuing to do so.
Sounds like you are doing better.
So this was the question about, Ms. Florine, the outreach. Here's the phone numbers. I may have told you this before. my first day there, I called this phone number just to see what happens from my 513 area code, and Carla called me back in 5 minutes like I was somebody complaining. I said, hey, Carla, it's Fred. So I tested it, and it works great. She's very good about responding. We want to make sure that we are accessible, and like I said, if somebody calls my desk, it doesn't go to the receptionist, I pick it up. And I try to make sure that all of us are responsive quickly to community concerns and questions, as well as questions we get from elected officials who've made significant contributions to the project. Questions?
So one question I have is, you lost a year in litigation, and you're going to make up 6 months of that in your construction process?
Yes.
And what's driving that? I mean, do you get a financial benefit as a function of
we've had,
starting revenue in October? Is that the big deal here?
We've been working with the contractor between our engineering team that we have to help oversee the project, and their team and their schedulers and planners. There's been some mitigations that were able to be achieved in the construction process. By doing work instead of consecutively, doing some of it concurrently. So there's been some resequencing going on. There's areas where overtime is going to be applied. So that will obviously be a cost that we'll have to work out with the contractor as to what kind of, that's called acceleration in the project. And, we're still working on all of that. And, I don't, right now, this is what is enabling us to get to reach the fall of 22 goal. And I think we're going to be able to do it. There was some float in the project, obviously, that especially during the testing and commissioning portion of the project that we think can be reduced a little, so that helps too. So all of this kind of gets us to that fall date.
So the other answer to your question, there's no incentive for us to perform early. There's some very, very, very significant penalties for being late. And so I think this is an important consideration. When you get a job that's delayed literally a year, it's very hard to go in, just go stop dead, and then jump to light speed again to get it done. During that delay, there was, MTA continued to support design work that could go on. We couldn't do any construction. The contractor is diligently looking for ways to, as Chuck mentioned, shorten the float. MTA staff and county staff have been very good when we run into a roadblock about immediately jumping on whatever it is that we need to get done to try to eliminate any delays that we have. I'll tell you the truth, it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it, it's a challenge. But our goal is to get the work done as quickly as we can, do it safely, and to do a quality job. So, everybody wants this thing done. Nobody wants it done on time more than I do. So we're very concerned.
Your penalties kick in when?
The RSA date. I guess they're probably right after whatever the final RSA date becomes.
So while it's not, I'm not sure exactly what the penalty is in the contract, but there's certainly, though, there's something. It's not called an incentive. It's called a milestone payment. So the contractor will earn a milestone payment at the end of the job when revenue service begins, and that's a significant payment of about $100 million. So yeah, so it's not labeled as an incentive, but certainly they're working for it.
The other part is that within the contracts we have that are what are called liquidated damages, those are the penalties that I was saying that are fairly significant.
But I assumed if it started a year late that your deadline, if you will, was also loaded a year late.
We're working on what that lengthening of time is. It's not a year.
Got it. That's not defined at this point?
Not completely.
Yeah.
Okay. I get that this is an ongoing conversation.
Yes.
Mr. Hucker?
I got a few that I haven't asked. Back to Littonsville. You said the construction of the replacement bridge is on time. You expect it to open this fall.
Give you a specific date when I get back.
Any guess on month?
Supposed to have 6 months. It's when the time it starts. I think they started mid-May, so 6 months from now. June 18th, actually. Or June 18th, okay. 6 months from June 18th.
They're making good progress over there. I don't anticipate this being a problem. Contractor's very aware of what their dates are.
Okay.
And there are penalties associated with not completing on time also.
Great, good to hear. As the chairman said about the skepticism in the neighborhoods about the Capitol Crescent Trail replacement, there's similar skepticisms in this area that this bridge, which has caused a lot of disruption, will be completed on time. So 6 months after June 18th is December 18th, so that's very late fall, but you think it'll be earlier than that?
I hope so.
Sounds.
Technically fall, I suppose.
I know, within a couple days. I'm
So can I just talk about that?
I think you've reminded me a couple times when the seasons start and end, when I make my presentations in the past.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did do with that was look at accelerated construction on that project and also trying to put a temporary bridge over at Talbot. And we could not do this bridge under partial construction. That's an area of expertise I have. It's not possible. We're realigning the bridge. We're completely replacing it. Well, we're raising it. We spent a lot of time looking at could we do something differently than a full-time closure. And because the road's being realigned and because it's a vertical clearance issue for the light rail line, it's just not feasible.
To do the staging, we
looked at that for about a month.
And
Right.
When the intersection will make more sense on that kind of offset T intersection on one end of the bridge where people have to kind of stop and figure out how to make the movement, next turning movement, that'll all be lined up like a normal intersection.
T intersection, yeah.
Okay, so related issue. As you know, the Talbot Avenue Bridge is scheduled to be demolished soon. It's very special to that community. I was in that community last night and meeting with one association, but also on Saturday there was the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the bridge, and over 200 people came out for that, and the county executive and many others. There's a great deal of history and sentiment, but it's also a very practical solution for a long time. It provides pedestrian access over the tracks between those two neighborhoods, and pedestrian access is particularly important to the Orthodox Jewish community, which uses that bridge to access their synagogue on Fridays. There's, excuse me. So I know you and I have discussed the status of that bridge, Fred, but can there be any temporary pedestrian bridge as a replacement once that bridge is closed, as there are temporary pedestrian bridges over Rock Creek Park and other?
So I'll investigate that. This is a little different because CSX is there. And, when the U.S. Congress gave them authority over the railroads, they have no limitations on what they can do or force us to do. It's very difficult to get an agreement. I will ask. It's almost impossible to get anything out of them. So we'll find out. I'll ask.
I know that's my experience too, but so you'll ask.
I'll ask.
Okay. Let us know any ways we could be helpful in that.
We've really tried to work over there to try to mitigate that impact to the community. I've been around with some of the community leadership. It's a tough situation, and I don't like how it came out. But we're working to try to mitigate and are sensitive to the issues that you brought up. Very sensitive.
Okay. Also, we're all familiar with the economic developments of this project, and it's a major reason we're all so supportive. But there are a lot of small businesses in danger of closing because of the disruption due to the project in Mr. Berlin's district on Elm Street, in my district on Bonifant Street. When there have been significant county construction projects, this council has put up, and the county executive have put up money to mitigate against the disruption and loss of business due to construction. And I think there's a need for some sort of economic assistance fund for businesses that are impacted by the Purple Line.
The chairman agrees. We had hoped for state legislation. That didn't move, but I have to tell you, I think it is your responsibility. This is your project.
I understand what you're saying and the solution that you're seeking, but at this time, the state does not have a program to meet those needs.
I don't understand how you cannot create such a program where you don't have the flexibility to either divert dollars or otherwise for this purpose. It is not okay. And
if you have the funding for police enforcement and many other things to mitigate the impact of the construction, it'll be highly ironic if some of the businesses who are trying to help with the Purple Line project, in fact, go out of business during the construction. right? Businesses that have been successful for decades in some of these communities.
I don't consider this to be Mr. Craig's responsibility. I consider this to be your responsibility, good sir.
Yeah, I'm very sympathetic to the needs, and I just don't have a method to assist the businesses in that manner at this time.
Are you looking to develop such a method?
No. I think this is also a policy that impacts MDOT statewide, and I think that maybe that's more of an issue that would have to be addressed at a level above myself.
Could you ask the secretary to please?
Yes.
We would request that you formally advise the secretary. We'd like to hear from him on this issue, because even at the largest level, I don't understand how, if the state embarks on a program that causes harm to businesses, that the state does not perceive it to be its responsibility to compensate them. Mm-hmm. I get it that this isn't an issue that could be resolved simply for Montgomery County in this situation, Prince George's County. I don't understand how it isn't a fundamental tenet of the state to compensate people as a function of a state decision to disrupt their business.
I will advise the secretary.
We would like a formal answer to that question.
I will arrange that.
Can you help me understand your comment about the statewide implications of this? Are you suggesting if you had some kind of compensation economic assistance fund in this project, you'd need it in other similar projects around the state?
I think the issue is that there's hundreds of projects carried out throughout the state by the modes of the Department of Transportation, and certainly there's business disruptions and other projects that occur, road reconstructions, bridge reconstructions, and I think that for the department, it seems to be a larger issue than just the Purple Line. Sure.
Here's what I'd say in response. I believe for years we've been hearing in the all the advocacy and marketing of this project. We've been hearing for so many years, and no one's been a bigger supporter than I have been, that this is a unique project, that there is no project like the Purple Line. This is not an ordinary MTA, MDOT construction project. And number two, to that end, we're not talking about a lane closure and a few people being late to work because of that over the course of a month or something, like some state highway or other small construction project. This is going on for years and years, and businesses that have a narrow are surviving on a very narrow margin, but have been successful, even when Silver Spring, for example, was struggling economically. Businesses that survived through the Great Recession now are in great danger, they think, of being out of business because no one will be able to access their business when Bonifant Street is closed, for example, until 2022. So it's a unique threat to them. It's unlike every other MTA project. It's unlike any other economic development project I see in the state. So I think it's pretty easy to say why this is different, and we don't have to worry about this slippery slope argument.
So, we have worked very aggressively to assist the business owners by shifting the hours of construction to make sure there's less interference, to increase signage, and direction for parking and access to these businesses. Carla has worked very hard as the contract has a business disruption requirement to communicate with businesses to find out what their needs are, and she has managed a lot of these on a case-by-case basis with individual business owners to tailor the activities to meet what their needs are. The state is committed to supporting the businesses, with the programs that we have available to us and what the constraints of our resources are.
Sure, and that's all appreciated. But I want you to hear me. The county, for example, just in a large construction project of a multifamily apartment building in Silver Spring, for example, we set up an economic assistance fund just to help the businesses impacted by that, and that's over a year and a half. This is a much, much larger and more disruptive project, and the state, has a lot more. It's a much larger, much larger and more impactful project that impacts a lot more dollars too. So I really hope you'll take this back to and get us an answer from the governor and the secretary.
Sure.
Mr. Craig, you were with us 4 days into it, and you're with us 6 months later.
Can I ask my last question?
Absolutely.
I don't think was there a slide on Tacoma Langley that I missed?
No.
Is it premature to talk about?
What I try to do is hit the big construction parts of the project, yeah.
Right. Okay.
We'll
I'll follow up with Carla on all the same concerns exist and are being conveyed to me from Tacoma Park elected officials and Prince George's elected officials about communication with businesses, pedestrian access, et cetera.
Do you feel like we're doing an adequate job?
I do. Yeah, I feel like you're doing a great job. The one big sore spot is this threat to small businesses that are impacted.
There was actually a walkthrough yesterday with Denny Tavares' office to start working with some of those businesses in Prince George's County, close to Tacoma as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Craig, all I can tell you is that from where I sit, you folks are doing as good a job as you can in a project that is going to be terribly disruptive. And you're mitigating it to the maximum extent possible. I get the state as being a good partner. We are not hearing in this moment in time from our constituents that are going crazy as a function of things that are happening. I assume that we will be hearing more as things pick up, which is why it's going to be more important than ever that you be proactive in the way in which I get that Carla is being. And so, no complaints here. You will be hearing a lot of them, I'm sure. And so how you respond to that is going to be terribly important. But I get your commitment to doing it. I think you guys are doing the work you need to do other than the state and the issue that we have just raised with you, good sir. Dr. Orr?
Compliment your county staff. They've been great to work with.
They are indeed.
The other part is I've never worked on a project that had as much political support at the top from you all, from the state, from community leaders as I have here. And that makes it a lot easier because this is an extraordinarily difficult job. People don't appreciate it. I think some of these people make it look easy. It's extraordinarily hard.
Yeah, it looks it. Dr. Orland, anything at your end? You probably have followed this project more than anyone else in the county council.
Not sure about that, but no, I don't have any more to add. The next briefing would be late March, early April.
If we can do anything better, please tell us. We're always striving to do better.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.